Right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Sweet and Salty Movie Review podcast. Once again, I am Sweet.
And I am salty.
Fantastic. Here we are one more time, one more week. Episode 43, 44, 45, 46. We're getting close to 50 episodes, Tom. We've almost been at this a year. Yes, we're back. Another week has passed. A bunch of films we've seen. We've got some fantastic overviews for you this week. The Book of Clarence, Abigail, and Challengers all coming up. We've been to see those three movies. We won't give you an in-depth review this week because they've only just come out, but we'll let you know if they're worth watching. And then we're going to discuss in a little more detail Civil War. Before we get there, though, Tom, how are you? How have you been?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Yeah, not too bad at all. Playing with new toys. So I got some new gardening cordless trimmers. So
power tools.
Exactly, power tools. So I was quite chuffed with that. Yeah. So
have you got one of those leaf blower things?
I have got a leaf blower.
And have you replicated that scene from the Michael Jackson song where he's holding onto the two trees being blown away by the wind?
No, I haven't.
You have to replicate that and put it on YouTube. You've got to do it. It's mandatory, Tom. It's mandatory. If you've got one of those leaf blowers, you've got to do that.
If we get enough people commenting on this podcast, then I may consider it.
No. You don't wait for the people to turn up to watch. You put stuff on that then attracts them to come and watch. That's why we do these things.
That's where I'm going wrong.
I've been trying these challenges out. So I've been on a bit of a health. Well, I haven't been on a health fad, but I've been trying different things in training. So I'm doing a lot of kickboxing and a lot of boxing to replace HIIT because HIIT's a very boring way to train. And I've also been working on flexibility because I have problems with my hips and my legs. And there's all these little challenges keep popping up on my Instagram because I keep putting up what the sort of exercises I'm doing just to sort of share the knowledge. And I keep trying them. So there's this one where you're kneeling on the ground, you have to grab your ankle and then come up. I can't do that at all. There's another one where you slide down the wall and then you sit on the floor, lay down, then come back up again. And I kind of slide down the wall and then just fall. There's those videos are on my Instagram and they're very, very, they're quite funny. One of them got like 1,000 views. That would be the one of me falling on my arse, I dare say.
That I was going to say that was probably Ben, and he's probably watched it 999 times, just laughing at you.
But that's kind of taking up all my spare time. Right, let's move on to the Book of Clarence. So, a down on his luck man struggles to find a better life for his family while fighting to free himself of debt. Captivated by the power and glory of the rising Messiah, he risks everything to carve his own path to a divine life, ultimately discovering that the redemptive power of belief may be his only way out. This, Tom, was a very odd film. I was expecting it to be a comedy. I can't recall the trailer, if I'm being honest. I know I did watch it with you, but the trailer didn't come back to my mind.
Right.
You said it was a comedy. It's kind of a comedy. I don't want to give anything away. It's a retelling of the story. As far as I can come down to it, it's a retelling of the story of Jesus Christ, but from a slightly different angle. So instead of being told from the traditional European Catholic Church angle, it's told from a different angle. The closest I would come to it, I think, is it's like a Monty Python kind of thing, where they've inserted characters into the story, but they've done it in a kind of Titanic way where these people could have existed and you'd never have known about it. And it's a very interesting retelling. And I was fascinated by this movie. I sat there for the whole thing and was really, really hooked on it. It's got a fantastic cast. I love James McAvoy in this. He's only in it for a bit. Benedict Cumberbatch as well does a fantastic job, but it's a brilliant cast of different characters. Fantastic with you got Lakeith Stanfield, R.J. Cyber, James McAvoy, Teyana Taylor, Omar Sy, and Benedict Cumberbatch are leading up the cast there. And I absolutely recommend this. Unless you are a very strict practicing Catholic who does not who essentially believes the Bible is completely real, because I think you might find some of this offensive, but otherwise it's a fascinating retelling of this story in the modern way, in a modern way. And I think everyone should go and watch this. I really do. I think it's brilliant. What do you reckon, Tom?
Well, you've pretty much stolen my thunder. So,
Ha
well, yeah. So, I do remember the trailer, and the reason I remember the trailer was because the trailer had the soundtrack to Prince, "I Would Die for You,"
Oh
and
yeah.
I'm a big Prince fan, so I was like, wow, okay, that's caught my attention straight away. And like you, I also thought this was going to be a comedy. Um, and as you rightly say, and I know you've given the description about a streetwise young man who's trying to find his way in the world. He doesn't believe in God, and there's various other elements to the story. It is a modern take on the biblical classic of Jesus Christ, and it's interesting. The first two people you mention are white actors, and predominantly 99% of the cast
Do you
of
know
a
why? It's because these guys are very big in America, I think, but they're not very big over here in the UK.
yes,
I don't recognise a lot of these names. If it had, if it had been, what's his Elijah Osmar, for example. I'm messing his name up. He's got a very difficult name to pronounce. But if he had been in it, bang, it's an immediate
yeah.
kind of immediate recognition. But I don't recognise many of the actors in this.
Well, the other interesting thing is it was produced by Jay-Z, married to
Mm.
Beyonce. The Just to give you a quick idea of the numbers, so it cost 40 million to produce and a 20 million marketing budget. So it's going to need to break between 120 to 150 million just to break even. And it's not going down well with the faith-based audiences in America. And we said this last night. You're either
It's
going to
not
love it
coming.
or
No,
you're going to
no.
hate it.
I think in Europe it'll be fine because we've gotten over the hump of the dark ages. I think most people in Europe are relatively enlightened, even if they're religious. They're enlightened enough to know, faith is good, but some of this stuff is just nonsense. But not so in America. In America, evangelicals and really religious people, it's
Yeah,
that's a very broad brush to tar people with, and you will in America especially. Bad news travels really quickly because you've got things like Fox News and OAN and people like that who just they will act as megaphones for this stuff. So you might have, 1% of the population turning around and saying we hate this, but they will broadcast it to the rest
correct.
of the nation like it's mainstream news.
Yeah, very.
Do you recommend a watch?
And do you know what? Yes, I do. And actually, I even said to you right at the end that could have gone on for at least another 15 minutes. There could have been a bit more to that
You
story.
just wanted to know what happened next, but you don't. There is. Let's leave it at that. We'll talk about it in a review next week because it's
Correct.
definitely
But
worth watching.
it is worth a watch, and
Mm.
ignore what you read in the press. It is a really good film, and actually there's some real good. It's not a comedy, but there were some really good laugh out loud moments. And I have to
It's
say, I
yeah.
think the screening we saw was actually a lot more busier than normal.
Mm.
So I think a lot of people thought it was going to be a comedy. So yeah, well worth a watch. Definitely one to
Absolutely. Just it is a bit mixed bag, isn't it? Because I'm just looking at the aggregators. Rotten Tomatoes got it 80%, which is very respectable. Empire Magazine gave it 2 out of 5, but the overall audience rating on Google is 4.2. Not that you can trust too much on the electronic scene because these things are easily manipulated, but yeah, I'm with you on this one. It's definitely worth a watch. IMDb's got it at 5.6 out of 10 at the moment. So, but we'll come back to that next week. So, moving on, I'll let you go with challenges first because I don't have
okay.
much to say about Abigail. We'll so in the briefest possible way, because Challengers looks like an interesting and involved movie. We're not reviewing this one, but because it's only literally just come out. Do you recommend this for review?
I do.
Tell us why.
It's an interesting movie. So the background is it is you're following three young tennis stars, up and coming tennis stars, and Zendaya, the young actress who's been pretty much in every major film going at the moment, in June and Spider-Man, and or dating Tom Holland, and been in a number
She's
of other
popular.
films. She is popular. So she is the lead actress in this particular film. She is an up and coming tennis star. She is about to hit the big time, and you're talking they're going to make millions or multi millions. And unfortunately, she has a injury, which literally brings her tennis career crashing to the ground. But while she was an up and coming tennis star, she also got to meet two young lads, similar age to her. And one was going to go turn pro straight away, and the other one was going to go through the tennis academy. And the movie flashes backwards and forwards to the current day, to the past, and you see how their lives are intertwined. Very interesting. If you like tennis, you'll love this. If you're looking at interesting style relationships or new age relationships, you'll probably like this as well. Um, Worth a watch. Definitely worth a watch. I got to see a unlimited screening, so it hasn't officially come out just yet, but it is due out in the next week or so. So yeah, enjoyable movie, but not a brilliant storyline if I'm really honest. But do you know what? Some good twists and turns.
So, listeners, this film will be out when you listen to this podcast. So, Friday the 26th, I'm seeing it on our local Cineworld, or I can see it in our local Cineworld. Interestingly, I'm just looking at the pictures, and I can see what you mean by flashbacks now, because the picture of Zendaya in the sunglasses with the blue top on from the movie, not from the poster. So, that picture, but from the movie, she looks like she's in her 30s maybe, or even her like her late 30s, whereas in the picture where she's on the bed with the two boys, she looks like there's in there today, in her very early 20s. And they've just done that with a hairstyle and a bit of makeup, so that's I
Correct.
don't think they've used any digital transformation there. Looks really good. So uh, yeah, I don't think I'll add anything
Definitely
to
worth a
that.
watch.
Yeah,
Definitely worth a
I
watch.
would I won't add anything more to that. You guys can go and find a cinema and go and watch it.
So, Abigail.
Just yes. So Abigail, this is a. So I decided I'd go and watch this because I really didn't feel like going and watch anything too complicated. I just wanted something that was a bit easy watching, switch your brain off and just enjoy it. And Abigail delivers that in spades. The young girl who's played by Alicia Weir, that's Abigail, is fantastic. This is a
Is she not the girl that also played Megan, the robot? Remember the film Megan?
no, I don't think so. I'll tap it in a second and find out. Um, the yes. So essentially, not to give anything away, basically a group of would-be criminals kidnaps the 12-year-old daughter of a powerful underworld figure, holding her for ransom in an isolated mansion. However, their plans starts to unravel when they discover their young captive is actually a bloodthirsty vampire, which you get straight out of the trailer. The first half of this is a fantastic horror movie that keeps you on the edge of your seat. The second half of this becomes more of an action vampire movie, and both of them, they're both really good. It's just it can't decide really if it's one or the other. It swaps from being a really good horror movie to being a really good action vampire movie. The problem is that smashing the two together doesn't necessarily combine in the right way. It's a bit like trying to combine, I don't know, uh, Kellogg's cornflakes with steak, kind of thing. Or Frosties with steak. Both are very nice on their own, but you wouldn't necessarily put them on the same plate. Definitely worth a watch if you like your action, you like a bit of horror, and you like your vampire movies. But don't expect this to be an Oscar-nominated storyline or anything too intelligent. It's pretty much what you see is what you get on the tin. And I'm pretty sure Melissa Barra, who plays Joey, who's our main character in this, I think she's in the Scream movies as well. And she's just, doing the she's hamming up the old horror movie vibes in this one. So yeah, so I'd say it's worth a watch.
I've
Definitely a
just
lovely film you can go and just switch off on. Go on.
and I've just done a quick search. So the lead actress, Alicia Weir, who plays Abigail, she was also in Matilda the musical, and she was also in Wicked Little Letters. So she wasn't in Megan. I thought she was also the
she's from, yes, that's where I recognised her from. Wicked Little Letters. She's the daughter.
Correct.
Yeah, the Irish lady's daughter. Yeah, she's really, really good in this. She's very, very good. she's really kind of, yeah. I mean, the reason the first half of this is so scary is because it's really well set. It's really well put together. So if anyone knows the Resident Evil games, the first one in the mansion, it's kind of got that kind of creepy, scary vibe thing going on. And she just plays this brilliant kind of sociopathic bloody vampire. Honestly, it's as I say, it's not going to win the awards. It's not doing anything massively original. But it is a really great kind of go and grab some popcorn, switch off your brain, and sit in the cinema for an hour and a half and have a bit of fun.
And it's rated 18, so I take it
it's
then
gory.
It's gory.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The first half, as I say, it's scary for a reason. It keeps you on the edge of the seat. If you'd been there, Tom, you would have jumped out your seat a couple of times. And then when you get to the end, there's so much action. It's more like an old 80s kind of action movie, lots of blood and gore and stuff. But as I say, it's just none of it's terrifying to that extent, and the action is all a bit daft, but perfectly enjoyable. I would watch that again, to be honest with you. Like, it's quite fun.
Sounds good.
Right.
Good.
That's the 3 movies we went to watch this week. So let's crack on with this week's review of Civil War. So, Civil War, Tom, Civil War. Have you collected your thoughts on this?
Well, I hope you noticed I've got my shit together this week. All the pictures, I've had background pictures for Abigail, Book of Clarence, and also Challengers. And I've got Civil War, and they've all had the writing the correct way round this week.
I have noticed.
So
yes,
yeah,
so they're all we can read it, and it all makes sense. So right, so Civil War, Tom. What did you think of Civil War? Give us your thoughts on this one.
I really enjoyed it. Well, let me rephrase that. It is a movie. This movie is about a team of journalists who travel across America, travel down from New York over to Charlottesville to try to get to Washington to have the final interview with the president.
Yes.
And you're following photographers and TV journalists, and you're also meeting up with military press as well. Yeah. And you are seeing how divided America is. The president
we've done this the wrong way around again. Hold on a second. So Civil War. Let me just go through the blurb. So it's in a dystopian future America, a team of military embedded journalists races against time to reach Washington, D.C. before rebel factions descend upon the White House. This is the story of a civil war in the not too distant future in America, and you see it through the eyes of these military embedded journalists. Carry on, Tom.
Correct. So for me, it really felt like close to the mark. The president had managed to secure a third term. The president's obviously made a few decisions that certain Americans agree with and other Americans don't agree with.
It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair. The 2020 election wasn't fair. So I deserve a third term. This is not the worst Trump impression ever. I'm glorious. I'm marvelous. I'm great. Just before you carry on, did you see he put up this fucking idiot? He put up a thing during the eclipse. He put up a gif of his head silhouetted coming up and blocking out the sun with like the words underneath it saying "Make America Great Again." And I thought, yeah, plunge it in the fucking darkness. What the hell?
Subliminally, there's a few messages that came across then.
He's gonna win the next goddamn election as well.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Not that he has a god complex. And
so we are essentially predicting this film will become reality in about 6 years.
Yeah. So it was really hard hitting. So as a non-American watching this movie, you can see America is already on. Well, actually, you can see Western society already on this journey to self-destruction, and most empires, or the Roman Empire, effectively crumbled on itself through infighting and politics, and now you're seeing it happen in America. And either someone's going to be very brave and stand up and go, "No, actually, we really do need to get our act together," or they are going to just implode. And for me, that it really felt raw. There was a few scenes where you knew someone was going to be shot, but even when the bullet was fired, I jumped because it was like, Jesus Christ, this is like shooting your neighbor. There was a classic line. It's, yeah, I know you're American, but what type of American are you? And it was like, Jesus Christ, we're all living on the same planet. We're all living in the same area, but they have now so turned in on themselves that anyone is a potential either a victim or an oppressor, or someone looking to take over. I thought there would be more fighting. So and that sounds really wrong to say that, but I was expecting more like dogfights between American fighter jets fighting each other, or seeing American warships firing missiles into the coast. It felt very much like a ground offensive where they were fighting street by street. And in theory, you would just say, well, actually, we'll just fire 25 cruise missiles or whatever and wipe out that particular block. So they hadn't gone down to that level, but they certainly were keeping it very much to a hand-to-hand stroke, street by street fighting. I liked the ending when they actually got to the White House, and I liked the character building between the old, jagged, haggard journalists and the young kid who wants to be a journalist, and effectively Kirsten Dunst can see herself in the young girl coming through. An awful lot of action. Some bits were a little bit slow, but actually it really followed a good narrative in terms of, we're here, we need to get to Washington, but we're going to go via Charlottesville to get to the front line to see everything in action. It could have been a bit more violent, but I found it quite hard going, but actually a really good movie to watch. And I think you even said this needs to be played in every school in America so people realize what's actually happening in the world.
So it's oh, I've lost my sound. Can you still hear me okay? Good.
Yeah.
So essentially the
I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, it's all right. I just can't hear myself for some reason. I can normally hear myself a little bit in the background. It's just throw me a curveball. So yes, I think the action wise, because this is a $50 million budget film, and it's made in America, you're not going to get your stealth jets flying through the air too much and helicopters firing off loads of rockets and things like that. Because it would be very expensive to make that. However, there is I think the action that's in there is designed it's very visceral. So, you've got very close up personal kind of, you got guys shooting each other. You got these guys in tactical vests wearing Hawaiian shirts underneath them, because it's a civil war, and not all of these guys are actual real soldiers, or they're soldiers that have been deployed without real equipment or without the proper equipment. And you see this through the lens of these of the photographers and their cameras, and they seem to have used more old-fashioned cameras with like film in them as well. It was
Yeah,
amazing to watch
it
them
was
actually produce the
develop it.
film. Yeah,
Yeah.
like developing film. We don't need to do that in the modern world. And even if there was a civil war in America, I can't see why you'd still be doing that, because that sort of film's very hard to come by. So you can see it's kind of meant to be a lot more granular. It's supposed to bring you up close and personal. So instead of seeing a jet fly over, fire a missile into a building and kill 500 people, which is what you would see but not see in like a Marvel movie, for example, this one you actually see people getting shot and you see the expression on their face, and it's the journalist snapshotting those moments, which really brings it home because it really makes you think. It's that I've often found this quite an interesting, again, conversation I've had with several Americans in the past when we talk about things like, well, we've got guns, but you've got knives, and knives are dangerous. So if you're going to, ban guns, surely you're going to ban knives. So like, yeah, there's a massive difference between sticking a knife in someone who's standing a foot away from you and shooting someone you can't really see clearly from 100 foot away. There's a big, big difference. That's why it's so much easier to get people to basically go around killing each other these days, because you're doing it from a distance. You're not up close and personal. You can't see that person. You're not inside their personal space. You can't read their body language. You're just looking at them down like the sights of a gun and pulling the trigger, or you're just holding down a button while a cannon fires off. So it's really visceral. It's really designed to bring you in and show you the sheer horror of what's going on in this war. And therefore, there aren't these big set piece battles. They're all very small, which is where your action disappears. The point I made about showing this in every school was not to show what is happening today. It's to basically point again. It's that point of saying, look, you don't want this to happen, do you? Because there's and when we talk about this, it kind of feels far-fetched here, but there's a significant number of people in America who believe there will be a civil war. And the way that Americans consume information is just insane. I mean, so I know sensible people in America who tell me stuff that I know is just bullshit, but they believe it because they don't know where to get their information from. And it's everything from simple things like, what's the right medication to take? We take for granted that we go to a doctor in the UK, we don't pay them because we pay for it through our taxes, so it's already paid for. So when I walk in a doctor's surgery, the doctor gets nothing for giving me a certain pill or a certain treatment. They just want to treat me and get me out. So when they say, Mark, you need this antibiotic, I trust them, I believe them, and then 9 out of 10 times I get better, or I go back and they change the treatment. In America, you're paying for things, so they don't necessarily trust that the doctor's telling them the true thing, because they're getting a kickback from selling a certain drug. And that happens. That sort of happens throughout all their media and information. It's just crazy, and you do sit there and wonder where whether this film is an example of what will happen or what could happen. And it feels like there's a very thin line between could and would. And the other thing I would point out as well, in addition, is that the director very deliberately picked California and Texas as the rebel states, because in America, California is the deepest of blues, and Texas is the deepest of reds. So they are polar opposite in the modern political world. So he tried to make sure it wasn't like Texas and Florida, or, one of those matching up two red states. So it would be very obvious that the guy in the White House was either a Democrat or a Republican.
Yeah.
And it does feel like sometimes this is a warning, that this is being posted up as a warning. What would you score this, Tom?
Well,
go on.
I'm also going to add, I really loved the black and white photos that the young girl was developing, and every so often in the film you would then see the black and white photos. So it would flash up on the screen, and it would be like either someone in pain, or someone has been shot, or there's a dead body, and it brought back memories of seeing footage of pictures of Vietnam. And I think that's what they were trying to do, to say, look, we haven't learned anything. People still get shot. We still see people dying, and the photos were quite shocking. And it was like, but these are American people being shot on American soil by American citizens, and that was quite harrowing as well.
Yeah, it's as you're right, it's deliberately done. They're deliberately using older technology because the digital world allows you to change things. You know, you can use your phone can deliberately move images around and remove stuff from an image, so it's easy to doctor. If these older cameras, they're analog. You know, you snap them, the light hits the silver residue, and it turns into a picture. There's no, you know, it's very hard to fake that, and therefore I think that gives the audience who's watching it a level of trust in what they're doing, and I think it's also aimed at a slightly older generation as well. If you know, my son won't know what that, you know, he won't cameras for him are on phones and
On
digital
phones, yeah.
So what, Tom, are you going to score this movie?
I'm scoring this a very solid 4.2.
Interesting. I'm around the same area. I was going to give it 4 out of 5, for no other reason than it's a very good film. If America wasn't in such a mess at the moment, this would just be a really great film. But it feels a lot more poignant. It's weirdly, it's a bit like One Life, for example, or the Great Escaper, where you feel like there's a lesson to be learnt in this movie, and people should pay attention. Because it's very easy to ignore bigger problems that I can't fix. But the fact is that we live in the Western world is democratized. If enough of us say we don't want this stuff, it won't happen because we have the power over that. But enough of us have to stand up and do something about it. Yeah.
Right. I've also scored it highly at 4.2 because it's a movie that I would watch again. And I would happily go back to see it on the big screen, or I would watch it on a streaming channel.
Absolutely. So if you haven't seen it already, go and watch Civil War. It's a fantastic film. So that brings us to the end of this week's podcast. One last thing of note. So this has come up several times through various comments and feedback and other things. And we were talking about this just before we started recording the podcast. So I just wanted to make this something clear. We can do what most people do when they review movies, go on here and just bitch and whine about them. And we can then put thumbnails up on our podcast and on our YouTube videos saying, this is appalling, this is terrible. You know, something that you know, bad news seems to sell better than good news. Yeah. But it's not really what we wanted to do. At least that was never my plan for this podcast. My plan for this podcast was what would I say if the person who made the film or starred in the film was, I'm on Graham Norton's sofa sitting next to the people in the movie, and I'm being asked, what are your thoughts about this? What do I say? Because I wouldn't say all those rude and nasty things. I would be critical, and we are critical, but we're always trying to find, you know, the things that you could enjoy, because there are movies that are bad. And, you know, as much as I enjoyed watching Argyle, I ripped it apart in some respects, but I never did any. I don't feel like I would be ashamed to say that to the director. As an opinion of my own, I wouldn't feel bad sharing that with them, as long as, you know, I'm not shouting it down at them. So that's why we do what we do, and we do it this way. Maybe this will never sell, or maybe it will. My personal opinion is that if we make these and we try and do as good a job as we can, the audience will eventually come to us rather than us trying to go to that audience. Because I think people would want a discerning view on stuff like this. Maybe not movies, I don't know, but you know, I think we're there, and if it doesn't work out, then well, we won't be retiring early, will we, Tom?
No.
Right. Next week, let's get out of the way because we're almost at 35 minutes in. Next week, we've got to split up because I'm heading up to London on Wednesday to go to the theatre. So, Tom, what are you going to see next week? Because we're not going to see the same thing.
I'm going to go and see another typically another conflict movie, and again, it's Russia versus America and versus other European nations. So I'm going to see the International Space Station movie, where World War III obviously breaks out on the planet, and then you've got astronauts on the space station who are now pitted against each other to try and obviously take control of the space station. So
Indeed.
so I suspect civil war's happening down below, and then international war is happening in the space station.
World War III is happening down below, and then the Russians and the Americans get into it apparently in the space station. At least that's what the trailers indicate.
The trailer says.
And I believe if you're looking for that movie, it's called ISS.
ISS, yep.
I will.
And what are you going to see?
Well, next Tuesday I'm going to go and see Boy Kills World, because again, there's just too much stress in the world at the moment. If I go and watch another movie about either God or wars, I might have a breakdown. So I'm going to go and see Boy Kills World, because that looks quite fun and silly, and yeah, it's meant to be some sort of like an action comedy. So I'll see that on Tuesday, and we'll tie back up again on Thursday and do this all over again.
Sounds good to me.
That's it, Tom.
I know. It's
lead
been
the
emotional.
way out.
It has been emotional. So, as always, listeners, thank you very much. If you've managed to listen to and stay with us this far, thank you very much. It has been our pleasure. As you know, we do love going to the movies, and we do love waxing lyrical about the positives on the movies. Thank you very much. Like, share, click. And if you like the YouTube channel as well, I know my brother, he's been listening and watching the videos, and he pinged me from France and said he really enjoyed it. So thanks, Mike. Really appreciate that feedback. I know one of my colleagues up in Manchester, he's also been listening in as well, and has provided some really good feedback. So yeah, thanks guys, really do appreciate the support, and take care. Good night, and catch up soon. Over to you, fella.
Every time you make a speech. Remember, America, make love, not war. See you all next week. Goodbye.